Well, Brad, I'm really looking forward to playing this piece that you've arranged for us, or I guess I should say you've arranged and re-envisioned it. This piece, Ice Princess, Suite from an Imaginary Ballet by original material by Rameau. And I guess one question I had was when you were commissioned to make this arrangement and rethink this music, why Rameau?
Well, Rameau was a request from Decoda, and I think it came about in part because one evening when Catherine, one of the artistic directors, was over visiting socially, we listened to some Rameau. One of my favorite recordings, Theodore Karensis, has a kind of outlandish take on it, but still in a very Baroque style. And I think the music really appealed to Catherine, and she brought the idea to the rest of the artistic team. And I think they agreed that Rameau would be a really cool thing to include on this concert, which made me really happy because it's some of my favorite music I've ever heard.
Yeah, and I was telling you in an email that I really don't know Rameau's music that well, and whenever I hear it, I'm always blown away and wonder why I haven't been listening to it all this time. I love those links that you sent.
He's one of those composers that kind of came into their own in old age. We think of Stravinsky and Verdi being similar composers that kept on cranking out incredible masterpieces. Elliott Carter would be another, all the way into really their sunset years. And not all of this music is from Rameau's old age, but most of it is from after he was 50, when he started writing operas. And that's when he started getting really famous in his own time. And even though he's writing in this grand French Baroque tradition, he's butting up against the beginning of the classical era. So he's both a bit of an anachronism in his time, but also writing music that's wildly popular. So there's kind of a lot of layers to what's going on as he's writing this music.
And one thing I love is how you've completely reimagined this music. So anyone listening to this would not say, oh, that must have been from the French Baroque era. It sounds completely modern. And I went back and listened to some of the operas that you mentioned that you took excerpts from, and I can clearly follow that it's an arrangement, but you've done things like cut beats off of measures. You've completely redone the scoring. Obviously, we don't have a Baroque orchestra. And so I'm just wondering about your process for kind of cutting and pasting this material together, and how you wrote Re-envisioned by Brad Balliet. So what is the re-envisioning process?
Well, I knew right away that a straight transcription would not work, or it would already be so distant from the original that there was no reason to try to be faithful. As soon as you introduce a clarinet into Rameau's orchestra, or a grand piano, or a B-flat trumpet, it's such a world apart that I thought, why not go much, much further with it? And in the end, I really was inspired by a piece like Stravinsky's Pulcinella, which is based on fragments of Pergolesi and other late Baroque, early classical composers, or Respighi's reworking of Rossini in La Boutique Fantastique, in which it's hard to say anymore, is this an arrangement or is this a composition? And in the end, I think it's really somewhere in between. So I started by just arranging the pieces for the ensemble and almost kind of making corrections on top of the score to bring it into our century and our world, and to make it more idiomatic for the instruments on stage, while at the same time trying to give everybody something really fun to do.
Meanwhile, the kind of problem of having to fit music to a prescribed set of instruments is a very Baroque problem, or at least classical. Composers used to do that all the time, right? Like you had a wind ensemble, and the public wanted to hear your latest symphony, so you'd have to arrange it for the instruments at hand. So I love that kind of old style parameters, but a very new language that you're applying to it.
That's very true. And maybe this project appealed to me so much because I genuinely enjoy listening to, for instance, Beethoven's Second Symphony arranged for flute, cello, and piano, which is absolutely something that would have been done in Beethoven's time. Beethoven even made versions of his pieces for wacky ensembles like that. And at the same time, there was a tradition during this time that parts could be played by other instruments if one was not available. So a bass line was just a bass line, and you could throw anybody on it. Although Rameau is unique in this way because he does have very specific timbres in mind for a lot of the ballet music in his operas. For instance, he'll prescribe at least 4 or 8 bassoons, a slew of oboes, violins, that kind of thing. So it's a mix of freedom and prescription that Rameau is dealing with. And I found that a fun thing to examine as I was transcribing these as well.
And in this case, as we corresponded about a kind of crazy sounding bass drum in the original Rameau that's transcribed for grand piano, kind of pounding out the lowest cluster of notes on the piano with pedal held down. It's going to be kind of an awesome effect, I think. I haven't heard it yet all put together.
I hope so. It sounded cool when I was banging it out on the pianos in the practice room at Carnegie Hall. The nice
Whenever
thing
I get to bang, I always love banging on the piano in a concert setting. That's kind of my dream.
Yeah, hopefully they don't get really furious with us, but you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. The nice thing is that if we had had percussion on this concert, I think I would definitely have just put it in the drums. But because we didn't, I had to find a different solution, which I think in the end is going to be a much more unique sound.
Well, I guess this
Perfect
is the
example
point
of limitations. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, enabling constraints, right. I guess this is the point where we've whetted everyone's appetite and we need to invite them to come to the show, which is Wednesday, January 22nd at 7:30 p.m. in Weill Hall, Carnegie Hall, New York City. We hope to see you there, and this is Rameau like you've never heard it before, arranged and re-envisioned by Brad Balliet.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Brad. Looking forward to working on this piece with you.